So say you found a skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Kent with Bent, number, I don't know, something. You may have noticed that I broke with my general naming convention that I've been using lately, which is to say Zelda games. And I have a very good reason for that. It is because I got lazy. And I did not want to make a Zelda-themed thumbnail because I didn't feel like it. So that's it. Oh, wait, why? Why is Bent not here? What is going on?
Hello, where am I? It's so dark here.
This is ridiculous. Oh, there you are. Okay, well there's a Dapper the Professional. Sorry about that, everybody. That's my bad. Take a drink for that. So Bent has woken himself up from torpor to come hang out. You know, the torpor that he goes into when he doesn't have pizza. Because, again, it's pretty much the only time he eats.
I'm so hungry, chat.
I know. They can tell. You're wasting away. You're skeletal, basically. Yeah. But, yeah, so we are here to, do Kent with Bent. So for those of you who might be new, Kent with Bent is my show where I and Bent Hovind, no relation, who is you. That's you, yep.
That's me.
We take a look at Kent Hovind stuff. And so in case you're new to the channel as a whole, basically I do two kinds of content. I have my scripted videos, which are they're fairly carefully researched. You know, I'm putting sources in the description. I'm going out and reading papers and sort of source checking the creationists, you know, that kind of stuff. And then here on my live shows, I basically go grab the bottom of the barrel creationists whom I don't usually need to go source check because like the things they say are so dumb that it doesn't even really need to be source checked because it's so obviously wrong if you know like anything about the topic in question, like anything at all. Right? So, yeah, that's why we do these live, is because while I don't have the time to look up everything, I use the creationists where it's really not necessary, right? It's sort of like debating a flat earther. It's handy if you can look things up, but like you should be able to demonstrate that the earth isn't flat without needing to look anything up. It's not hard to do. So, yeah. And our show has a few drinking rules. Before we get into that, Bent, Hovind, no relation, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am also doing well. I've definitely had better days. Had a little bit of a pain flare-up, which sort of reduced the amount that I was scripting because I was noticing that between the creationists I was talking about in my script, as well as the increased pain, I was getting too angry. And instead of like being educational and informative, my script was just turning into me being mean, which is fun. Don't get me wrong. But like, I don't want it to just be that for like an hour. I don't want there to be just an hour of me being a jerk, even if the person I'm being a jerk to absolutely deserves it, which he does in this case. So, yeah. But we do have a little bit of a drinking game, which actually I forgot to increment the counter, which means that's a Dapper's a Professional another time, so we'll take a drink for it. So I am drinking a wheat beer here. And I'll go through the drinking rules, and Bent will correct me for those that I missed, because I think he has a list.
I have a list.
Okay, so first of all, we will drink if we get what's called Dapper's a Professional. So Dapper's a Professional occurs when I screw something up in the production of the show. So if I switch to the wrong video, or I accidentally don't show Bent's face when he's on camera, like I did earlier, or stuff like that, I take a drink. Now, this does not count the things that your insurance company might call an act of God, right? So if the router here at Casa Dino gets hit by lightning, and therefore the stream goes down, that's not on me, right? So if YouTube HQ blows up, That's not on me. That's on someone else or no one, right? So it's going to be my mistake. Since it just came up, I'll also say we take 1 drink for every gifted membership, and Silent Tetrapod just gifted 5 of those, so I will take 5 drinks while Bent Hovind tells you about some of the other drinking rules.
We drink when Kent gets something wrong that's so incredibly stupid, it makes our brains overheat.
We sure
and then
do.
We have to drink to cool down.
Yep, brain coolant. We'll also take a drink if Kent Hovind tells a joke that doesn't land or a story that didn't happen, and that's a little bit of a judgment call there on the stories, but I don't really care because the points are made up and they don't really matter. Even though I just call them points, not drink triggers, it's the same thing, right? We're doing like whose line is it anyway rules. We're like nothing here matters. We're just having fun. Well, not nothing, but like the drink triggers don't really matter. Anyway, we'll also take a drink if Kent Hovind gets something that's actually right, but it can't just be something he's quoting. It actually has to be like in his brain, and then he says the thing and it's right. Then we'll take a drink for that. We'll also take a drink if Kent Hovind mentions the Nazis at all. Doesn't have to compare anyone to them if he just brings them up. We'll also take a drink if Kent Hovind cites a source and we check the source, and not only does the source fail to back him up, but if it actively contradicts him, there's the word I'm looking for, we will take a drink for that. We will also take a drink if Kent Hovind confuses what we can know about Lucy, the Australopithecus afarensis individual, with what we can know about any larger taxon to which she belongs on the basis of other finds. So, for instance, if he says something like, well, Australopithecus couldn't have walked upright, or at least we don't know if they could have because we couldn't find Lucy's foot. Doesn't matter. We have other Australopithecus feet. So that's not a valid argument. Let's take a drink if either Bent or I can successfully predict what's coming next. And if we can do, and it has to be something that's not completely obvious. So if we can do that, then we'll take a drink. We will also take a drink if anyone super chats or membership chats anything to the effect that answers in Genesis are a bag of dicks, or if anyone, super chats or membership chats anything with our kaiju emoji, or if any of the kaiju like Mothra or Godzilla come by audibly, we'll take a drink. And I think I've covered all of them. Bent, what have I missed?
That's all of them.
That is all of them? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I did it. All right. So we have I also want to give a disclaimer. Borg Emporia, yes, you may post the link for charity, although I would have preferred that you spam it less, that you're asking the question. So yes, Craig McNeil, FTFE, is helping fundraise for a charity that helps out veterans in the UK. He is doing this in honor of his late father-in-law, who was in fact a veteran, as well as Craig himself as a veteran. And also both myself and Bent are veterans, although of a different military. And so generally speaking, we are supportive of charities that benefit veterans because, you know, sometimes that's important. So yeah, but feel free to post that link, Borg Emporia. All right, so about the drinking game, one of the things I want to make very clear here is you absolutely do not have to either participate or participate with alcohol. If you want to not participate, that's absolutely fine. If you want to participate with something other than alcohol, also fine. Feel free, drink water, juice, tea, soda, coffee, eat a piece of popcorn every time we take a drink. I don't care. It is here for fun, and if you do not want to participate with an intoxicating substance, that's absolutely fine. And if you do decide to participate with an intoxicating substance, please know your limits. Be careful. Don't then go out and drive a car, fly an airplane, operate heavy machinery, or text your ex. It's not worth it. I'm going to be pinning this link from Borg Emporia. Let's see. Now, that is the preliminary stuff. But I also want to talk about the fact that last time we were here, Kent Hovind referenced a book. And I have since gone and looked up this book because I wanted, like, I knew what it was, but I wanted a more first-hand account of what the book is. Basically, what does the book say about itself, like in the synopsis? So, this book is That Their Words May Be Used Against Them by Henry M. Morris, who you might remember from such creationist wonders of literary genius, such as let's see. Where are some other books that he's got? Let's see. I believe he was yes, Unlocking the Mysteries of Genesis. What is creation science? Creation and the Second Coming. Scientific creationism. Yeah, lots of books like that. Also on Amazon, when you go to get this book, it also suggests to you a book about the lost civilization of Tartaria and the Great Reset. So the cluster of beliefs surrounding this particular book includes the mud flood people. So if you're reading that their words may be used against them, Amazon assumes that maybe you'd be interested in Tartaria conspiracy theories. So that's fun. And the synopsis for this book is, this vast storehouse of quotes compiled by Dr. Henry M. Morris and divided into sections gives much food for thought to those confused by evolutionary theory. These relevant quotations bring to light the fatal weakness of the entire structure of evolutionism, inadvertently exposed by its own promoters. I have several times on this channel said that creationists have created books that are just quote mines, so often getting it wrong, that creationists will then take and not check the original source and then get wrong what the original source was. And the most recent thing from Kent is exactly that. He believed that Henry Morris was correct when Henry Morris said that a single mammoth was carbon dated as tens of thousands of years difference in age between different parts of its body. That's not true. The original source has 2 mammoths. But Kent was like, well, I mean, no one who writes a book about God could be a dishonest man. So I guess I'll just believe Henry Morris. It confirms my biases. That's what happened here. So I just wanted to go through that before we actually hit play to give more context to what just happened. Mr. Plowking for $5 says, I'm a sweaty mess from being outside, and AIG is a sack of schlongs. They sure are. Let's take a drink for that. Thank you very much. And thank you for having me be like your post-working outside show. All right, Dutch Tuna Kid Official for $2 says, back from vacation, ready to enjoy some nonsense. Well, we got plenty of that coming. So, yeah, I just wanted to sort of give out that whole thing. Apparently, this book is still in print and is currently on sale for $9.30 over on the Jeff Bezos website, in case you want that their words may be used against them. I'm not going to buy it, but, oh, there's only one left in stock. Order soon, everybody. Quick, go snatch it up. My goodness. Yeah. All right. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, Bent, are you going to become more ready, or should we just go?
I think we should just go.
All right, here we go.
In the same paper, this fellow said one part of Dima, the frozen mammoth, was 40,000 years old. Another part is 26,000. And the wood next to it was 9,000.
Yeah, except that that's not true. You're not getting that from Troy L. Pugh quaternary stratigraphic nomenclature and unglaciated central Alaska. I don't know what that is. Geological Survey professional paper 862 U.S. Government Printing Office 1975 page 30. You're getting that from Henry Morris's lies. Hence, you've already admitted that. Let's see. For $5, the Peggy Jace, the Carbon 14 mythicist says, so basically it's, I don't see anything wrong with quote mining the book. Yeah, basically. I don't know if that's actually where Matt Powell got his idea that quote mining is just fine and not a big deal. But it's certainly an attitude that Henry Morris seems to share.
And the skeptics will argue, well, yeah, that's because certain parts of this mammoth were contaminated because, water was flowing through there and it washed out some of the C14, so it gave an older age.
Okay, well, first of all, that could be a thing. But also, Kent, it's just not true. So no, the skeptics are going to say, why the hell are you using a book of quote mines to get your information instead of just reading the original? Because another thing he said before this was that he was having the original mailed to him. That's something you do before you make the claim.
Okay. Then how do you know the other fossils that you dig up you have the right age for?
Well, we don't always know, but there's this thing called cross-checking, right? So let's say I wanted to figure out how old Bent was, but I don't want to ask him because it's secret. I want to get him a special birthday gift for his next birthday based on his age, right? I don't want to ask. Okay. So I sneak around and I find his driver's license. And it has an age on it. Okay. Then I go and I find his birth certificate. And it has the same age, same birth date. Okay, cool. So then, like, I ask his brother and his mother, maybe his sister, and they all tell me the same date for his birthday with the same year. Okay, cool. But then I go and I check, like, I don't know, some of his personnel record from the military. And it gives me a different date. Well, that's weird. So what do? Well, I've got, at this point, like, what? 7 reliable sources that are usually pretty good at figuring out Bent's age, but one of them is different from the others. Bent, what do you think the explanation is?
I think someone screwed up as opposed to 6 other people screwing up.
Yeah, so the one that's different is probably the one that is a little weird, and maybe I should look into it, and maybe I can find a reason why that's wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the same thing with dating things in geology. If everything is telling you the same answer, except for one thing, then chances are something's screwy with that one thing. Because you know what? The real world is complicated. Funny things happen. And sometimes one of your measurements doesn't really work. Okay, cool. That's how we do it. We use the preponderance of the evidence to come to our conclusion. And sometimes, you get anomalous results. It happens. There's definitely been times when I've been making measurements and something weird happened. There was a time when I thought that I had found some kind of radioactive contamination because I got a little spike on my detector. Then I went back over the same spot. Nothing happened. So what happened? I don't know. Probably a bunch of stuff from the just ambient background just happened to hit my detector all at once. Right? The background isn't a steady, constant thing. It fluctuates. And I probably just had a spike in background radiation because it wasn't there when I went back over it. What do I do with that? I assume it's probably not radioactive contamination because there's no more evidence of it.
See what I mean? You got a problem either way. 1949, when they first started doing carbon dating, Harold Anthony wrote an article in Natural History and showed how the lower leg of a mammoth is 15,000 years old, but the skin was 21,000. And the skeptics will say, oh yeah, but we've gotten better at it. I think we've shown they have not gotten better at it.
You have not shown that, Ken. You've asserted that. And your evidence to back this up has been citations from the 40s through the 70s, as well as actually what you're doing is citing a book of lies by a known liar. Right? Like, sorry.
2 Colorado Creek mammoths, this Colorado Creek, Alaska, carbon dated 22,000 and 16,000. Which one's right?
Well, let's see. 2 Colorado Creek, Arkansas mammoths had to radio. Why couldn't they both be right? Like, why is it that both mammoths had to be contemporaneous? Because all I'm hearing is 2 different mammoths from roughly the same location in terms of, like, what city it was found near. Colorado Creek. Both had different dates, to which I just say, okay, well, they probably died at different times, right? Like, why is that not an okay answer?
Seems perfectly reasonable to me.
Yeah, like, does Kent think that all of the... Okay. Would Kent be confused by going to a cemetery and noticing that some of the gravestones have dates that are centuries earlier than some of the other newer dates? Like, would that confuse Kent?
At some point it would. I'm not sure how many years it would take.
Okay.
for him to be confused. But yes.
Because I mean, I'm aware of burial locations that have been in constant use for like over a millennium. So like, is that how could this skeleton be 800 years old and this other skeleton be 50 years old? Well, people have been using this as an internment spot for bodies for over 800 years. That's it. That's the whole explanation. Mammoths, it turns out, have been around for tens of thousands of years, and they were dying that entire time, like the whole time. There was no golden age of the immortal mammoths. Not a real thing.
These mammoths are side by side.
I mean, you say that, Kent, but I don't believe you because you've given me lies before. So, yeah, unless you can show me far more compelling evidence than two elephants near each other were dated at different dates, I don't think that says anything about the reliability of carbon dating.
Living penguins dated about 8,000 years old.
Okay, so a couple problems. The first one is you got to be dead to be carbon dated, because carbon dating tells you when something died. So you're already using this inappropriately. But also, penguins eat marine food, which means that they get pretty much all of their carbon from things like fish. And the problem with marine environments is that they are known carbon reservoirs that have carbon-14 depleted sources of carbon, which means they're known to be unreliable and to give older ages than is appropriate. So this is just well in line with what we already know about carbon dating and its limits. This is the same problem as the whole like, oh, hey, I put a grain of rice on a truck scale and it said 0, so I guess rice is massless. Nope, that's not a valid conclusion. That's not how that works. Or alternately, getting a kitchen scale that only goes to like a kilogram and putting your 5 kilogram dumbbell on it and being like, oh, I guess this dumbbell is broken. It only weighs 1 kilogram. Nope. Again, you're using the wrong measurement tool. Or perhaps you're using the right measurement tool incorrectly. Like, that's not how that works.
11 human skeletons, the earliest known human remains in the Western Hemisphere, have been dated by accelerator mass spectrometer. All 11 dated at about 5,000 radiocarbon years, or less.
Okay, hold on. I need to go back and see what the heck this is, because I don't know what the problem is supposed to be. Okay. American Antiquity. Is that like a journal? I've never heard of that one. Let's find out what American Antiquity is. American Antiquity is a professional journal published by Cambridge University Press for the Society of American Archaeology. Oh, okay, so it is real. Let's see. 11 human skeletons, the earliest known human remains in the Western Hemisphere, have been dated by the accelerator mass spectrometer. All 11 were dated at about 5,000 radiocarbon years or less. Okay. I don't know what the claim is supposed to be. That's a problem, right? Like, maybe in 1985, the oldest known skeletons that had been carbon dated actually did come back as 5,000 years or less. I don't know what to do with this other than say, okay, cool.
Mass spectrometer. All 11 dated at about 5,000 radiocarbon years, or less. Oldest skeletons we have, less than 5,000 years old.
No, Kent. The oldest skeletons that had then been found in the Western Hemisphere. That's a whole lot different than the oldest skeletons we have found. I'm taking a drink because it's hard for me to imagine that he actually thinks that what he read meant what he just said. Or maybe he really is illiterate, which I have suspected for a while now, right? Like, one of the ways that you could explain why Kent Hovind is like this is that he might just be functionally illiterate, right? He just might have no real ability to take in more but the simplest sentences in writing and understand them and integrate that, right? So, like, there's levels of reading. And in America, at least, we give reading levels based on, like, what year in school we think you should have accomplished this by, right? And so it basically goes by the 1 through 12 grade system that the United States uses. And then it just goes to college level. College level is basically the highest level reading that we're measuring. And so at the first, the lowest levels, you expect that the person will be able to look at words and, at least with familiar words, be able to tell you what the word is and repeat the word out loud, right? That's like your first level of understanding. And then eventually we get to things like an ability to puzzle out more complex words or use context clues to figure out unknown words, things like words that might not have been seen before in writing, but that are somewhat familiar to the reader. And eventually get to things like, the ability to understand plot points and character and who's doing what, and to answer questions about the literal plot of a story. And then eventually you get to things like, the ability to recognize themes, interpret subtext, pull out meaning that is, not blatantly stated in the text and things like that. And I think that Kent is somewhere before full ability to understand the literal meaning of sentences in most cases. I think he is still at the point where he's fairly reliable in repeating back the words that are on the page that he is familiar with. And that's about it. Simon Tetrapod, who's been a member for 40 months, says, but his thesis is so well written with Amothra. Yeah, well, we'll take a drink for that. And my favorite thing about his thesis is that it says in the body of the thesis that he dictated this to some poor woman who had to just write it all down. And I cannot imagine the torture of being that poor woman having to write all of this down on her typewriter or whatever, as Ken just spews this nonsense. Zenoon, who's been a member for 32 months, says, oh, look, it's free chat time with a Godzilla. Thank you very much, and we'll take a drink for that. All right, here we go.
Why would that be? There was a flood. This is
Kent, my guy. If there were a flood, then you wouldn't have to cherry pick the oldest skeletons from 1985 in North America or the Western Hemisphere or whatever. You could just pick the oldest skeletons. And I'll tell you that the oldest skeletons are actually too old to be radiocarbon dated. They just say 50,000 years, which is just the upper end. So the fact that the oldest known skeletons in some place are younger than the oldest skeletons is not very significant to anything. To go back to the cemetery thing, right? It would be like if I went to a brand new cemetery and was like, wow, look, the oldest body in this cemetery is from 2005. I guess the universe started back in, 2005 or so. Okay, maybe. But also there are older cemeteries with older bodies that might mitigate against that conclusion, Just maybe. I don't know. Ben, have you ever been to a cemetery with dates earlier than 2005?
Yes, I have.
Wow.
Yes, I have.
DM Wing, who's been a member for 44 months, says membership benefits: make a dapper drink with a Godzilla, a Mothra, a Ghidorah, and an ANG's a bag of dicks emoji, and we will indeed take a drink for that. Thank you. All right, here we go.
This is not carbon dating. This is accelerator mass spectrometer dating. There's several different ways they.
Kent, it said radiocarbon. Oh my god. Okay. The mass spectrometer is the machine that you put the sample in, Kent, and then you figure out which atoms it's made of, and some of them are carbon-14, and some of them aren't. Some of them are carbon-12, and some of them are various oxygen isotopes, and you can tell based on the mass spectrometer. This isn't radiocarbon dating, it's mass spectrometer dating. It's like saying you're not going to weigh something, you're just going to put it on a scale. Yeah, that's what the scale is doing. It's weighing the thing. I'm taking a drink for that. That might be the stupidest thing we're going to hear tonight. It's mass spectrometer dating.
You can try to date things and see how long they've been dead. Material from dinosaur bones were dated at 34,000 years old.
dinosaur bones don't have original carbon, which means no matter what they read, it's not the age of the dinosaur. Also, if I remember correctly, this is a drawing of a man excavating a whale skeleton. So, weird choice of picture, but I don't really care.
Normally, if you took a dinosaur bone in and said, would you please carbon date this, they would say, no, we won't do that because it's too old.
I mean, that might be a reason they do it, but it might also just be that, like, it's not the original dead tissue of the animal in question. So, no matter what it gives you, it won't be the right answer. Bragwin for $20, thank you very much, says, if he thinks that the Earth is young and the Bible is historical and thus infallible, then why wasn't there anything to do with anywhere outside of the Levant in the entirety of the Goofy Bag of Ducks instruction manual? Well, I would point out that actually there are some aspects of the Bible that do take place outside of Levant. There are aspects of the New Testament that take place in various places around Anatolia, as well as the Mediterranean and into the Italian peninsula. Also, in various parts of both the Old and New Testaments, there are aspects of it that take place in Mesopotamia as well as Egypt. And there are references to places that are now like Ethiopia and Eritrea. So it's actually not strictly speaking true that the entire Bible takes place within the Levant. But as to why it's restricted to such a small area, I don't know what Kent would say. What I would say is that because the humans who wrote the various books of the Bible lived and were familiar with those areas, and that's what they wrote about. But yeah, so I don't know what Kent would say. Ben, do you have an idea as to what you think Kent might say?
I actually don't know.
I guess if I like gun to my head, I have to come up with an answer. I might say something like, God was interacting in the Bible with specific people who were chosen by him from a specific like ethnic group chosen by him, and that those people happened to live in that place, and that they were the people whom God chose to make himself known to and to create a special covenant with them. That's my best attempt at coming up with a reason that Kent might give. But also, I mean, Kent's not nearly as smart as I am, which is not a brag on my part, because it's not hard to be as smarter than Kent Hovind. So his idea might be way more stupid than that. I don't know. Lieutenant Math Navigator for $5 says, that's right, the sample goes in the square mass spectrometer. Oh, I love that video. Everything goes in the square hole.
It's off the chart. The chart only goes back 50,000, and this is 70 million, so it won't work.
Well, I mean, I have no idea how old the specific dinosaur bones were, because they go back way more than 70 million years, but like, sure, I don't know, maybe.
Well, how do you know it's 70 million? Try it anyway, please. Would you please carbon?
Okay, so how do we know it's 70 million? That's actually a good question. So how do we know how old a fossil is? Well, in a few cases that are very rare, you can just directly test it, right? So, for instance, if a fossil is embedded in tuff, which is volcanic ash, you can directly test that ash to see when it was molten, and there you go. The fossil is about as old as the ash that it's encased in, because a fossil is going to be about as old as the sediment it's encased in, obviously. But that's pretty rare. There are a few places where you can do that. Ashfall Beds in the United States is actually a pretty famous place where a volcanic eruption killed a whole bunch of animals, especially notably a big herd of early rhinoceros. Because in case you didn't know, rhinoceros evolved in North America and then spread into Eurasia and then went extinct in North America. So largely the same thing happened with camels too, and horses actually. So weird stuff there. But anyway, for the most part, though, you can't do that. So instead, what we do is, first of all, we have a stratigraphic column, right? So we have all these different layers of the Earth, and each one has its own name, and each one has its own little subdivision that we also give names to. And so, you know, we have a geological era, like the Jurassic era, and it's divided into various groups called stages and ages. And then within all of these, there are formations. And then within each formation, there are members of the formation. And then within each member, there are different laminae, and in some cases even strata within that member that we also have written down and carefully recorded. And we have these charts of what the stratigraphy is like for most of the major fossil sites that we know of, and for those that we don't, we construct them. Okay. Then we can find igneous rocks that are between the sedimentary strata, or in some cases interlaced within them. And then we can figure out where in the sequence of the strata they must have occurred based on how high or low they are in that column. And then we can date those. And the more of those we can date, the better we can get at saying which exact part of which stratigraphic column is what age. And that's how we do that. And if you want to say that doesn't work, well, you have to not just discredit carbon dating, but basically you have to discredit nuclear physics is what that comes down to, is nuclear physics, basically. And also a lot of chemistry. You have to invalidate a large chunk of chemistry and more or less all of nuclear physics and parts of quantum physics. So good luck.
Did it anyway for me. They just want to do it. Okay. Russian scientists, however you pronounce their names here, carbon dated dinosaur bones at under 30,000 years old. Hugh Miller had this done.
Russian scientists Kuznetsov and Ivanov carbon dated, according to Strange Stories, Amazing Facts, Reader's Digest, 1978, the well-respected peer-reviewed journal Reader's Digest. Maybe I might be wrong about this. Bent, in your experience or in your knowledge, is Reader's Digest a peer-reviewed scientific journal?
The last time I checked, it was not peer-reviewed.
No. Oh, that's weird. Okay.
Yeah.
So they could just print anything, right? And like no one can really stop them, or
no one can stop them.
Huh.
They can print whatever they want.
Interesting. And they don't have some kind of like ethical obligation to have everything fact-checked by experts, by multiple experts, in order to make sure that everything checks out?
That's debatable, I would say, but maybe not.
Well, peer-reviewed journals certainly do have that obligation. That's what the peer review part is.
Yeah,
Huh.
They should, but they don't.
Also, I don't know that I trust a Cold War era popular publication to accurately report on Soviet scientific discoveries. Yeah, I don't know. Did you know that one of the problems that the Western world is facing in terms of medical technology is that bacteria are starting to have the ability to like adapt to antibiotics almost as fast, or in some cases faster than we can come up with new antibiotics? And did you also know that this is something that might be at least alleviated somewhat if hospitals in places like Europe or the United States or Canada had training with bacteriophage therapy, which is something that the Soviet Union was working on and actually was pretty successful with. But the so-called first world countries were like, no, that's dirty communist science. We're not going to do that. And so we basically left an entire medical technology on the table in terms of treating bacterial infections. So now, if you have something that needs a bacteriophage treatment, you kind of have to go to a Soviet bloc country if you need that. So, which is not really an option for most people with bacterial infections that have multiple antibiotic resistance. I don't know. Seems like there's a long history of the so-called Western world just ignoring or misreporting or just getting wrong what was going on in the scientific halls of the Soviet Union. Now, to be fair, there was a whole bunch of bullshit that also happened there, right? Like Lysenkoism was dumb and horrible and killed lots of people. And it should be ignored in terms of like scientific research. But like, yeah, the Cold War was not a good time for, open and honest sharing of scientific research between those two groups.
Columbus, Ohio. This guy had dinosaur bones dated at under 20,000 years old, about 20,000 years old, because he did not tell them they were dinosaur bones.
Okay. So some guy dug up a dinosaur bone, and unlike our previous scientists, who at least says they were scientists, this was just some guy. How did he control for contamination, Kent? Because that's not actually easy to do, right? Like, Bent, you've worked in a lab, right? How easy is it to contaminate slides?
It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're careful, it's not a big deal.
But if someone who doesn't know how to be careful came in?
If you didn't want to be careful, you could easily do it.
Yeah. Or what if you just didn't know how to be careful?
Yeah, that same thing.
Yeah. Like, would you trust me to handle slides at like a lab?
Without training.
Exactly. So this Hugh guy, I don't know what his training was, but apparently he wasn't a scientist. And so even if all of this is real, contamination is a thing that happens.
If he would have told him what they were, guess what number they would have come back with?
The number they would have measured. Because if they had bothered to do the test, which they might have if, he wanted to still pay for it, they'll just give you the results. But they'll also probably give you a warning about things that might invalidate this. Like, I'm familiar with one case, and I'm not sure if Kent is going to bring it up, where a fossil was submitted for carbon dating, but it had been covered in shellac. And in case you don't know, shellac is something that actually has organic components to it. And so it itself has carbon-14 in it. And so the fossil was returned with a date attached, but also a note saying that the fossil had been treated with shellac and that the date was thereby influenced by the shellac and was so invalid. But they provided a date anyway. They gave the measurement, right? So, like, that's what would have happened. They probably would have given a warning like, oh, hey, we're pretty sure there was contamination, but here's your number anyway. But they first would have said, hey, do you actually want us to do this test? Because we're pretty sure it won't tell you anything because of contamination, or the fossil's been coated in shellac or something like that. Because the labs aren't there to just, like, scam people. They don't want to gain the reputation as the lab that will just do the tests without ever warning you that you shouldn't do the test, which are expensive, right? Because, mass spectrometers are expensive. The training to use them is expensive. So getting a sample dated is expensive. And so, yeah, they'll warn you. And they'll say like, oh, hey, before we do this test for like, $20,000 or something, we're pretty sure it won't tell you anything. Do you want to waste that money anyway? And you can say yes. Templar Wharton, who's been a member for 8 months and is at the tetrapod level, says, how did he know it was a dinosaur bone, Godzilla? That's actually a good question, too. But it's also possible he was just living on land that had a lot of dinosaur bones and he was familiar enough with them. Because depending on the bone, right? Some bones are pretty distinctive as being dinosaur bones. Like, a lot of dinosaur skulls are very distinctive. Dinosaur hip bones, femora, very distinctive. The scapula is pretty distinctive. Coracoids, a little less. Ribs, probably not if you're not an expert. But like, yeah, there's also that question. How do we know it was a dinosaur bone? Because I'm sorry, but Amazing Facts from Reader's Digest from 1978 is not a source I accept as valid. I just don't.
70 million, probably. All right, let's take a quick...
No, Kent. No one is going to take your dinosaur bone, carbon date it, and then tell you that it's 70 million years old. Because carbon dating can't give you that answer. So I don't think anyone's going to say, oh, we carbon dated this at 70 million years old. Here's your bone back. Because that would be grounds for a fraud lawsuit, most likely. I'm not a lawyer, though, so, like, I don't know. If there's any lawyers in chat, let me know. Would that seems like that would be an actionable thing. Like, that would be some kind of tort. And I would call it fraud, but I don't actually know if that's the exact actual tort that it would be. I don't know. Maybe it's like unjust conversion or something. There's so many different names for different torts. He says the non-lawyer who has no idea what he's talking about.
break. Come back, talk a little more about carbon dating and then potassium argon dating.
Oh, good.
Get back. Okay, let's continue now a little bit more on carbon dating. Let me read this quote to you. A very interesting story here. A geologist at the Berkeley Geochronology Center, Carl Swisher, used the most advanced techniques to date human fossils. Last spring, he was reevaluating Homo erectus skulls found in Java in the 1930s by testing the sediment found with them. By the way, let me make a comment here. Homo erectus, we covered on videotape number 2 about the big cavemen, has been renamed several times. It was first called Java man, then it was called Pithecanthropus erectus, and then now it's called Homo erectus.
Okay, so that's one time being renamed. And that's because Java Man isn't like a Linnaean classification. That's just a nickname for a skull or a group of human remains from Java. So let's take a drink for Kent not knowing what it means to be renamed. And the reason Pithecanthropus was dropped in favor of Homo was because it was decided that Homo erectus was not distinct enough from Homo sapiens, the type species for the genus, to warrant its own generic name. Which doesn't change anything about the fossils or the animals. It just means, hey, we don't think this is distinct enough to get its own, like, genus. Which, like, yeah, okay. Goop23 for $2 says, was Berserkly a joke that didn't land? It was! Oh my goodness, I didn't even notice. You're right, thank you. I'll take a drink for that. Good point, Goop23. Thank you. All right, let's update the counter here. All right, here we go.
In any case, it's baloney. Okay, it's not a missing link at all. But
okay. Well, first of all, it is a missing link in the sense that, well, first, not non-missing link in the sense that it's been found, but it's transitional form in that it is intermediate in a whole bunch of features between earlier members of genus Homo, like Homo habilis, and later members of genus Homo, like Homo sapiens or Homo neanderthalensis. So, like, I don't know, Kent, just saying nuh-uh doesn't help. And also pointing out that it has a nickname and that the genus was changed also doesn't help with any of that. Like, I'm not even sure how that would work, right? It's like, I just don't know. Bent, I don't know. Do you understand how Uncle Kent is getting to this conclusion that the name changes are important?
I'm not sure where he's going with that, and if he's even going to make a point about it.
I don't think he is. I think he's just going to continue. Yeah, I think he's just going to continue on.
Yeah.
Dubose went to Java, which is part of Indonesia.
She said Dubose. How much you want to bet it's actually Dubois? Because it's French, and Kent can't read French names. Yeah. In fact, actually, I'm just going to Google Java Man Dubois. Let's see. Yeah, it's Dubois. It's Thomas Dubois. Okay. Yeah. Marie-Eugène François Thomas Dubois. Yep. Yeah, it's Dubois, not Dubose. Okay, I'm just going to take a drink. That hurt. Naramda puts for $2 says, he made fun of Berkeley by giving it a cool name. Yeah. So Berserkly is one of his things. He also likes to say National Pornographic instead of National Geographic. Apparently, because, like, sometimes you can see boobs. Like, that's it. Which, I'm sorry, but I don't actually agree with Kent's apparent conclusion that anytime a bare breast is depicted, that makes it pornography. Because pornography is intended for arousal. And I don't think that every depiction of a bare breast is intended for that. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a weirdo. Or maybe, as one Tasmanian might say, maybe that actually makes me gay. Is that I don't think that every single breast is inherently sexual. Maybe that's what it is.
By Vietnam, looking for missing links. I mean, that's why he went. Okay, so this guy's not a unbiased observer.
I like the idea that the only way to be an unbiased paleontologist is to just go randomly stick your thumb in the ground or something and see what, like, you turn up. If you go looking for a thing, no. Like, oh, you want to go find a T-Rex, and so you're going to go to, like, Montana, where they're known to be found? No, that makes you biased. Yeah, Kent, people go out looking to dig up particular things, and they go to places where they think it's likely that they'll find them. Like, what? do you think that every single person who went to California during the gold rush was biased because they wanted to find gold, and that therefore means that they didn't find gold even though they did? Like, what are we doing here? Like, he was looking for the missing link. Yeah. Otherwise, why would anyone have been digging? I'm taking another drink. That's such a stupid point. Jeez.
He gets there. He finds a little piece of a skull cap from an orangutan, I believe it was, or an ape of some kind.
It was an ape. It was Homo erectus. Yep. And this has been supported by the fact that more things past the skull cap have been found in the region that are consistent with his reports of the skull cap. And if I remember correctly, the skull cap was lost during World War II. It was sent on a train to keep it safe during the Japanese invasion of China. And then it just never turned up anywhere, as far as I know. Unless he's talking about a different specimen. But if I remember correctly, that is what happened. Although I might also be thinking of a different Homo erectus, which is P. Kingman. So, like, I don't know. Ask Erica. She knows this stuff better than I do. World War II was not a good time for fossils. Also destroyed the Spinosaurus holotype. So, yeah. Thanks the Allies for bombing a museum. Kind of wish that maybe you could have not done that. But, like, okay.
He found 3 human teeth. They were not together. And he found a human thigh bone, I think it was a year later, and 50 feet away. He concluded, wow, ape's skull cap, human thigh bone. This is an ape that could walk, half human, half ape.
Okay, there are problems with that in that we have other specimens of Homo erectus, so even if Kent's characterization were correct, which it's not, we found numerous other bits of Homo erectus remains, and they are not either just modern humans or orangutans. They are, in fact, neither of those things, and they have morphology in each bone that is intermediate between earlier hominids like Homo habilis and, later ones like Homo sapiens. But even if it were the case that Java Man was literally an orangutan skull cap and some scattered human bones, we have nearly complete Homo erectus skeletons from elsewhere. So it doesn't matter, right? Like, imagine trying to say that T-Rex didn't exist because the bone I found wasn't sufficiently diagnostic of Tyrannosaurus Rex, but I called it that anyway. Okay, cool, but like Sue exists, and Stan exists, and multiple other T-Rexes exist. So even if you're right that my little bone that I think is a T-Rex bone isn't, that doesn't invalidate T-Rex as a valid taxon, right? Like, that's a real creature that still existed. So yeah, it doesn't matter whether Java Man in particular was actually Homo erectus. It was, but it doesn't matter.
He didn't tell everybody that he also found 2 normal human skulls in the same area.
I don't remember ever hearing about that, but I mean, humans live in the area, so like, you could find their bones. That's not terribly shocking. I don't know. I feel like finding human bones in a place where humans live is the kind of thing you might expect.
I agree.
He hid those.
Yeah, right. Seems reasonable. Like sometimes I've found the bones of animals in the woods, and they were animals that lived in the area, like deer bones or things like that. So, once found a big deer femur in the woods.
Really?
Oh yeah, just sitting out there. Yep.
Was under his bed, under the boards, under his floor. Kind of like Telltale Heart, Edgar Allan Poe,
I can't tell if that was a joke, an attempt to poison the well, or what. Like, what was that? Beam me up, Bob says, aren't humans apes? Yes, they absolutely are. But Kent rejects that. And so whenever he says ape, I just assume that he is saying non-human ape. Because that's what he means, basically. The group of animals that he would call non-human apes, and the group of animals that he would call apes and the group of animals that I would call non-human apes have a nearly 100% overlap. Like, he and I might be willing to quibble about, like, which members of genus Homo count as quote unquote human, whatever that means. But outside of that, basically everything on Australopithecus, I would say, is a non-human ape. And I think Kent would agree with me. And also for all the non-human extant apes like gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans, gibbons, and such, I think we would agree that those are apes. He would just disagree with me that humans are also apes, which, I mean, they are, just anatomically. So, Lieutenant Math Navigator for $5 says, what exactly is the impact factor of some guy et al.? Roughly 0, if I remember correctly. Yeah, approximately 0. All right, here we go.
And because he knew if people found out he spent all his time over there digging in the dirt to find a dead ape's skull, everybody would think, why are you spending all your time digging in the dirt to find the dead ape's skull?
Because that's paleontology.
Where else would you find it?
Yeah. Also, is Kent under the impression that like no one is interested in non-human ancestor fossil apes? Because we are. I mean, there's dozens of named fossil apes that aren't hominins, like Gracopithecus or Gigantopithecus, or like just so many. I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but in some of my videos, I've actually gone through a list of some of them. Because creationists like to pretend that no one bothers with non-hominin ape paleontology, but it's just not true. It's just that, like, newspapers care less, right? Like, Bent, have you heard of Australopithecus africanus?
I've heard the name, but I don't know anything about it.
Right, but if someone said that to you, you'd probably think, that's the name of an animal I've heard of.
Yeah.
What about Gracopithecus?
No.
Or Shivapithecus?
No.
Yeah, those are still fossil apes. They're just not as widely known outside of paleontology circles. So people would have just been like, oh, cool, you found some ape fossils. Neat. Now we know more about the, prehistoric ape diversity in, like, Java. Which is in Indonesia, right? Am I right about that? Is Java an island in Indonesia? Now I don't know.
I don't know.
I feel like it's in Indonesia. Sunda Islands in the Southeast Asian country of Indonesia. Yes, it is in Indonesia. Yay! I remember geography. Let's see. Arrow Dodger for $4.99 says, nice Dell laptop, dumbass. I love how old that laptop looks. I mean, it's got like actual like monitor cables, like slots for it. It's great. So ancient. Look at the size of the fans on that thing. Exhaust ports, like, geez. But you know what? It was a different time when he gave this talk. I'm sure that was cutting edge technology at the time. So let me adjust this thing here. There we go. All right. Actually, you know what? It is basically break time. So I am going to give us a little intermission. And in the meantime, you guys can listen to the musical stylings of one Bent Hovind, which is you.
Oh, yeah, that's me.
Yeah, that's you. Yeah. So, and then we will be right back. I will have a new beer, and we will continue on. So please stick with me, those of you who, are enjoying this. And also, I got to say, I am seeing about 130 people watching, but only 61 likes, which means I like less than half of you, half as well as you deserve. So hit that like button, or you'll get Bilbo'd again. All right, we'll be right back, everybody. Okay, we are back. Thank you for sticking with us. Those of you who did, which looks like most of you. I'm still seeing 120 people here, so thank you very much. Before we get right back into it, there's a few things I want to say. One is thank you so much for everyone who is supporting the channel, whether it be through Patreon memberships, gifting memberships, super thanks, super chats, any of those things. If you are someone who is currently not supporting financially, but you can both afford to and are interested in doing so, there are a few ways to do so. One of the best ways is the Patreon. The Patreon is where I get to keep the most, which is why it's one of the ways that I say is the best. It starts at $1 a month. You can get a 15% discount if you go annually. There's also the channel memberships. That starts at $1.99. The Patreon is linked in the description. Channel memberships have a join button right under this video. Those both give you early access to my scripted videos, of which there should be a few coming out in the next few weeks, I think, like next couple of weeks. That early access often lasts for months and months. They also give you early access, or sorry, not early access, just access to my Discord server, which is one of the best ways to get in contact with me or to hang out with other people who are supporting the channel. Let's see. There's also, like I said, super chatting, gifting memberships always absolutely helps. If a monthly or an annual thing isn't your thing and you just want to give me a little support here and there, I do have 2 wish lists in the description. I have a Steam wish list and a Throne wish list in the description. So if you want to get me something off Steam, or you want to get me a book or a little snack or something like that, there's stuff on the Throne wish list. Also, there is an option on there to just get me something that isn't on the list. So if there's something you really feel like I need to have, you should be able to get it to me via that option. There's also rendering for me. So the way I get my animated videos out is that I upload the animation file, it's a Blender file, to a place called Sheepit. And the way Sheepit works is I render for Sheepit, they give me points. When other people render my stuff for Sheepit, it costs me points. And so the more points I have, the higher priority my animations are, and the faster they get rendered. I'm at the point now where I'm pretty much always either first or second in line for the render queue. And in order to stay there, I have to keep rendering. And if you want to help me with that, there is a list of instructions. You just go to the website on the section How to Render for Me, download the client for your operating system, and use the login information. And then if you render on Sheepit with that login information, I will get those points, and they will help me get the videos out faster. All right, that is all I wanted to say about that stuff. Sorry it took, good 5 minutes, but hey, that's the commercial bit. It's the only commercial bit I usually do on these live streams. So let's go ahead and we'll see what other stupid stuff Kent has for us.
If you're going to spend your time digging in the dirt, you want people to think you're doing it for a good reason. You don't want people to realize how dumb you are for spending all your time digging in the dirt to find this bone. All right. So, and back to the story here.
Do you think that Kent knows that sometimes people get grants to do paleontology and then nothing happens? Like they don't find the thing they were looking for, and then people just go back and get more grants anyway because nothing is ever guaranteed, and the people who pay for paleontology grants know that?
I think all of that would go way over Kent's head.
Yeah, okay, that's probably true.
It really would.
A hominid species assumed to be an ancestor of Homo sapien, which is baloney, Erectus was thought to have vanished some 250,000 years ago.
Lieutenant Math Navigator for $20 says the above authors consider the specimens K. Hovind, the specimen K. Hovind, to be sufficiently behaviorally distinct from H. sapiens to warrant a novel specific designation. We propose the new taxon, Widopithecus floradensis. That's actually really good, and I love that. Yeah. You know what? That made me drink enough that I will take, laugh enough that I will take a drink as cheers, and I'm putting it on the counter. And no, it's not a drinking rule, and no, I don't care, because again, it doesn't matter. Plus, that was the last little bit of my first beer, and so now I get to pour my second beer while Bent reads that super chat for $2 from Lieutenant Math Navigator while I'm trying to pour.
$2. Lieutenant Math Navigator says, and I can't believe YouTube didn't flag that.
Yeah, you would think Widopithecus would get flagged by YouTube, but I guess not. Maybe they're just not as careful as Twitch, because I've found Twitch to be just draconian in some cases. So sometimes I tell the story. Oh, I screwed up the counter here. My bad. So that's the actual value. So I'll take a drink for Dapper's a Professional. But yeah, I've told the story about how I was watching someone play Total War Warhammer 2 as the Dark Elves, and I could not name their capital city or the continent on which the Dark Elves live because they wouldn't let me. And if you know what those words are, you'll know why.
Again, baloney. Even though he used 2 different dating methods, Swisher kept making the same startling find. The bones were 53,000 years at most, and possibly no more than 27,000 years. A stretch of time contemporaneous with modern humans. I would like to point out, Your Honor, that this is not an exact science, okay? If you get an error of 96%, is this beyond all reasonable doubt?
Okay. Okay, first of all, Newsweek is, again, not a valid source, Kent. I don't care what Newsweek has to say. Further, I don't know what these measurements are. I don't know what the dating method is. I don't know, like, I don't have enough to say whether or not these dates make any sense. But also, let's say that they're true, and you found a 27-year-old Homo erectus specimen. That just means Homo erectus didn't go extinct when we thought it did, and some little pocket of them survived. That's it. That's all it means. Like, okay, you know that right now we sometimes find species that we thought were extinct, and it turns out no, they weren't. That's the thing that happened. You might remember a time when that happened with the American black-footed ferret. It was thought to be extinct. Then we found more of them. Turns out not extinct. That's a thing that happens. You know that the last mammoths didn't die until well into the historical period. When the pharaohs were building their pyramids, there were still mammoths around on one island, Wrangel Island. So what? Does that mean that elephants are fake? Does that mean that evolution isn't real? I don't know what the conclusion I'm supposed to draw is. I mean, clearly the conclusion is supposed to be, oh, dating techniques don't work because Newsweek reported anomalous dates, maybe. I just don't know how to get from that to, therefore, physics is wrong, because that's what Kent is asking us to believe, remember, is that physics is wrong. And I don't mean like some hypothesis in physics is wrong. I mean like fundamental aspects of physics, like what's the strength of the weak nuclear force? That kind of thing is wrong.
I'd say this raises incredible doubts, okay? How do you know either one of the dates are right?
Well, those weren't 2 dates, Kent. You reported them as a range. So how do we know that the dates are right? Well, we double check, right? We check other things. We come to a preponderance of all the evidence. We check all of it. Yeah, that's how science actually works. You know, I'm just going to take a drink for Kent just fundamentally not understanding science. And then I'll have to talk about what science is. So science builds a consensus on a consilience of data, right? When virtually all the data points in a particular direction and there's only occasional outliers, that tends to be the direction that the consensus goes in science. So basically, all the evidence is compatible with an ancient Earth of billions of years old. None of it is compatible with a 6,000-year-old Earth. And the fact that occasionally we might turn up a skeleton that seems younger than we expect isn't a good reason to discard that, right? So just like if you were to say that, I think that I will make a cake with eggs, right? That's how I'm going to put eggs in my cake. If someday you happen to crack open an egg and it's rotten and it ruins your cake, that's not a good reason to stop using eggs in cake, right? Because it still won't work. And I don't know why I'm using so many food analogies today. Maybe I'm just hungry. Everyone, get Ben free pizza so I can buy myself pizza so that I won't be hungry, and then I'll stop talking about cake. Or maybe I should just get a cake.
I don't like cake.
I don't like cake. It's the weird thing. But
Except for cheesecake.
Well, yeah, but that's
really a cake.
No, it's a pie. I say it's a pie.
Yeah.
And as part of my evidence, it has a filling and a crust, and it usually doesn't have frosting. And also, it's called a pie in virtually every other language that isn't English that has a word for it. So, yeah.
How do you know it's not 50 years old? You know, I wouldn't trust any of the dating methods any farther than I could throw them.
Okay, cool. Your incredulity isn't an argument, Kent. The fact that Kent Hovind is too dumb to understand science is not an argument against science.
So here he's getting 96% error. But even then, this is not what they were looking for. They were looking for 250,000, weren't they?
Okay, so remember that time earlier when Kent said that if you gave them a specimen and told them how old you thought it would be, that they would just conform to that age when they returned your carbon dating results. Remember that? That was just last hour. Here he's saying, no, they won't. They'll give you these crazy dates that they don't believe. Which is it, Kent? Is the radiocarbon dating place going to give you the dates that they think you want, or are they going to give you the dates that they get? Because you don't have any examples of them just lying about the age that we can verify, but you do here have an example of them not giving the age that, quote unquote, you would expect. So I don't know what to do with this, Kent. What are you saying about the carbon dating places? Are they lying or are they not? Take a drink for that. Kent can't keep his own story straight.
They didn't get close. Here's what you ought to consider about carbon dating. When you date a sample of known age, like the snails or the penguins or something like that, you know.
Okay, so the animals that we know it can't work on because they live near carbon reservoirs, because the snails he's talking about were specifically roadside snails near a freaking coal plant. So, yeah.
How old it is. It's still alive. It doesn't work. If you date a sample of unknown age, it is assumed to work.
So this is actually not true. And some of the examples include archaeological specimens, samples, I'm not sure what noun to use there, that have been independently dated with both things like dendrochronology or electron spin resonance, and also with carbon dating, and found to have consistent ages, which means we do know how old they work. And also in some cases that have documentary evidence of their age, right? Like, this is the tomb of such and such who died in the 4th year of the reign of King whomever, right? So we do actually have examples where it's known to work. Kent chose not to cherry pick those because they don't work for his argument. Also, carbon dating has been used by so-called biblical archaeologists to validate various aspects of biblical chronology, as well as just Bible manuscripts. So if you want to get rid of carbon dating, we're getting rid of most of our evidence for like the history of the Bible and what things from it can actually be confirmed archaeologically, because there are things from the Bible that can be confirmed archaeologically. So like, I don't know, if you just want to get rid of all of that, which most creationists are actually loath to do, then I guess you can. The solution most creationists come up with is something like, oh, carbon dating is reliable for like about 4,000 years. But then past that, the flood did weird wonky things with carbon ratios, and we can't trust it after that. It's, okay, I guess, sure, that's something, I guess. But what it does mean is that it does known in known cases, at least some of them.
That's silly. As elements decay, they produce helium.
Well, some elements spontaneously decay by emitting alpha particles, which is a helium-4 nucleus. So that's kind of true. I'll take a drink. It's approximately true. Like, it's not all of them, but it's a lot of them, I guess. Alpha particles are pretty common. So, yeah. They're also not terribly dangerous unless you like get them inside of your body. Your skin is more than enough to stop pretty much any alpha particle. But if you were to say eat an alpha emitter, yeah, that's bad. Don't do that. That was real bad.
One of the byproducts of radioactive decay, as the molecule explodes, it sends off alpha particles or beta particles and helium.
Kent thinks that that nuclear decay is just spontaneous fission. Oh my god. God damn it, Kent. Get something right. I'm taking another drink. Jeez. Ben, you had nuclear training.
Oh, that was a long time ago.
But do you remember looking at that big sort of diagonal chart of nuclides where we got like the what was it? I think it was like the atomic weight on one axis, and then the other axis was the atomic number. And then on each one of those charts, or each square in this chart that went up sort of from the bottom left to the top right diagonally, there would be like the most frequent form of decay listed for that nuclide. Do you remember that chart?
I actually do not remember that.
Oh my goodness. What do I pay you for?
I was able to brain dump that.
Well, I remember it existing. And one of the things that you learn pretty early on when you're using these kinds of charts is that most nuclides, when they decay, they do so, if they're doing it spontaneously, they do so by emitting a particle or sometimes a pair. Basically, no nuclides have their like most frequent form of decay to just be spontaneous fission shooting off a bunch of alpha particles. It happens, but like it's definitely uncommon. It's not the main way that nuclides decay. Alpha emitters, each nuclide that decays to emit an alpha, usually only emits one when it does it. Mine Finished Sock for $2 says, "Don't lie about science, like and share instead." I agreed, although this one might just be that Kent is an absolute moron. I'm willing to give him that one on this. I think that's plausible.
Uranium way down in the ground is decaying. This helium gets trapped. It slowly finds a little crack and works. Helium floats, you know, like we have helium gas to fill balloons with. This helium migrates around through the rocks if it can, okay, and eventually it'll collect inside a cave. If it's got a roof where it can't get through very quickly, you might go into some caves and you walk along the cave and you happen to get into a high part, the ceiling may be full of helium if there's no circulation in the room to stir it up. So you're breathing and you start talking real funny, you better get out of there because you are no longer in oxygen.
I do want to point out that helium can also escape from caves, because what he's talking about is helium escaping from inside of a crystal, which means it can escape from a cave too. So like, I don't know, I just felt like I would put that out there, that yeah, helium can also escape from a cave. So, yeah.
You probably have about 2 or 3 breaths and you're going to faint.
Most people can go without oxygen intake for more than the time it takes to do 2 breaths. I don't know, Ben, have you ever held your breath?
Yes, I have.
Did you pass out as a result within the space of like 30 seconds?
I've never passed out from holding my breath.
Okay.
I've held my breath for close to 2 minutes.
Look,
before.
I'm not saying that if you enter a cave and you start speaking like you just inhaled helium that you shouldn't leave, but like you got more than to do it. You can just leave at probably the same pace you enter. I don't know. Maybe Kent can't hold his breath. Maybe he just doesn't have that ability. It's possible.
You're now in helium. The miners used to bring canaries down with them when they went into the mines because the canary is very sensitive to the atmosphere and it would drop over dead if you were in an area that didn't have oxygen.
Or that had toxic gases, which was the actual concern, because there's a bigger concern for just odorless toxic gases, you know, especially after people started burning coal inside of mines to power machines. in which case carbon monoxide could build up. And then the canary would die from the carbon monoxide long before a human would even show symptoms. And so then you leave. So there's that. But also, there are various pockets of toxic gases that are underground. It's not primarily helium that you're worried about. But you know what? We'll take a drink for Kent being correct that canaries were taken into coal mines to indicate bad air quality because they would die long before a human would. Nowadays, you use testers that actually can just directly sample the air and tell you if it's safe to breathe. And fun fact, at one point, I was actually a certified miner in Arizona. I never set foot in a mine, but I was certified to do so. Had it come up. Yeah. So I had to take a whole big class about mine safety. And then it was basically because my manager was like, we can now take contracts for mines. I was like, okay, that's cool. Are we going to do that? And then we just never did. And I was like, all right, well, I got a cool certificate from the mining place and they gave me some free donuts. So thanks. Yeah. It was an easy week at work. I just showed up, listened to this guy talk about mine safety, and then took the tests. And I mean, obviously I passed the tests. They weren't rocket science. So it's also where I learned the word berm. That's a fun word. Yeah. I had never heard that word before, or I had never known that word before. It's entirely possible I'd heard it and just not remembered.
Because sometimes in mines, they're digging out the coal. The coal is, decaying or whatever and producing different gases that are poisonous. But or they're just explosive, like methane or something.
That is a concern. I'll take a drink. Kent is right. That is a concern. Wow. Okay. Kent might actually not be as useless in a mine as I might have otherwise thought.
And down in this cave, and this, air gets trapped in these caves. I went into a big coal mine up in Birmingham, west of Birmingham. They took me down into the mine at 3 in the morning. Didn't matter. It was dark down there in the daytime too. But they had this giant fan, the biggest fan I've ever seen in my life. It was probably bigger around than this room is tall. I would say it was a 16-foot fan blade.
Seems plausible.
They got this thing mounted to a big diesel engine, and it's cranking like crazy, blowing air, and it's got a big tunnel built over it down into the ground, which goes down to the coal mine. At the other end of the coal mine, 2 miles away, there's another big hole to suck air in. And this fan has a backup system, all kinds of emergency bells and whistles, and if the motor goes down, another motor kicks on. That fan constantly is blowing air out, sucking air through the mine to make sure they don't get a methane buildup.
Well, also to make sure that there's always oxygen, because even without a methane buildup, if you spend enough time with no airflow, you're going to get areas with no oxygen. So, he's not wrong, but he is leaving some bits out, but, whatever, it's fine.
And you go down in the mine and you can feel this breeze blowing all the time. That's because this fan is incredible.
And Gladstone for $10 says, hey, Dapper and Bent from the sauna known as Florida. I just want to offer you drink, because AIG and Kent are both sacks of dinkles, and we will take a drink. Thank you very much. Yeah, living in Tucson, I don't really see the point of a sauna, right? Just go outside. You just walk outside. Now you're in a sauna, right? It's going to be 42 degrees or something, or if you're doing Celsius, or was it 110 or something Fahrenheit? Walk outside. Basically a sauna. If you're oh, it's too dry, I want a wet sauna. All right, we'll just splash some water on the ground. It'll be fine.
We went up, you could hear this thing 6 blocks away, they turned the fan on. Man, it was incredible. Anyway, who cares? This helium eventually is going to get out of the rocks, if it can, and get into the atmosphere. So the theory says the Earth is billions of years old, and there's been how many earthquakes during these billions of years? Oh, wow, there's been a lot of them, As the Earth cracks and moves around and shakes, this helium is going to find a way out. It's going to get into the atmosphere. Helium, being a light gas, is going to float up real high in the atmosphere.
Okay. there's two ways he could reasonably go with this. One is he could say there's too much helium in the atmosphere. The other one is he could do the helium escape time in crystals, and crystals still have too much helium given how long it takes for the helium to escape. Therefore, the crystals must be young. I think he's going for there's too much helium in the atmosphere. What do you think, Ben?
I would think the same, but it's just a guess.
Okay. Dark Law Dragon has just joined the channel at the tetrapod level. Thank you very much. Everybody, send some tetrapod emojis. Just don't send pelagic tunicate emojis, because everyone hates those. They're disgusting. I don't even know why I have them. I really shouldn't.
Very little of it is able to actually escape to space, but some of it can. Helium can get out there to the edge, and molecule just bounces off and drifts off, gone forever.
It's more that it's blown away by the solar wind when it gets to the upper levels of the atmosphere. But sure, okay, whatever. He's not, again, it's true that helium escapes, so sure.
After calculating all factors, how much helium is able to escape from the atmosphere? How much is being produced? There's only enough helium in the atmosphere for less than 2 million years of Earth's existence. So if the Earth has been here for 4.6 billion years, why isn't there more helium?
Okay, let's take a drink. Okay. So first, Kent's just wrong that if you take all of this into account, that you get 2 million years and then there should be no, it's actually not even clear what he's trying to say here. So the real analogy that you want to use is, say you have a hose, right? And I have a big, tube, like the late McQueen would talk about, a tube, but this one's waterproof, right? And it's very, very tall. We'll say that it's 50 meters tall, right? That's real big. And you climb up to the top of this tube, and you have a hose. And you turn on the spigot for the hose, and you start trying to fill the tube. But what you don't know is that 3 meters from the bottom of that tube, I have drilled a hole. And it's a fairly small hole, but it's there. What will happen eventually is that you will fill up the tube part of the way, and then at a certain point, the level of flow from the hose will match the level of flow out of the tube through that hole. And at that point, as long as the hose is on, that's where the level of the water will stay, right? Because you have an inflow and an outflow, and once they equalize, you reach a steady state situation, right? So that at that point, the tube always has the same amount of water in it. And so that also happens with helium on Earth. As time goes, helium is produced and helium leaves. And even if Kent's number is correct of 2 million, what that just means is that's the average stay time for an atom of helium in the atmosphere. That's about how long it takes between getting out of whatever crystal it's in and leaving the planet entirely. That's all that is. Kent will do the same thing with salts and other minerals in the ocean. He'll be like, well, at the rate of salt coming into the ocean, there's only about 6,000 to 7,000 years worth of time for that much salt to accumulate, ignoring that there are aspects of the ocean that take salt out. And while he's not pretending that there's no way for helium to leave, that's the solution to this. We're at approximately steady state with helium. That's it. That's the whole thing.
Helium is an extremely rare gas in the atmosphere. Why isn't there a lot of helium up there? Yes, sir.
Because it escapes, Kent. You literally just told us. I'm taking a drink. Why isn't there more of this gas that escapes?
Can you expound on why very little is able to escape in space?
There's several factors that influence, a pan of water just sitting there eventually evaporates. The molecules on the surface are wiggling around, and they might get enough energy to jump up and then fall back down. And evaporation, as you add more energy, they can bounce around faster. If you really add energy, like a flame underneath, and get it boiling, now the molecules are moving around like crazy, and they can fly off into space, and you can boil away a pot of water much faster than you can just watch it evaporate. The Earth's atmosphere.
You know what? I just realized something. And it's that I did not justify the title of the stream. I just mentioned it and then went on. And I do feel like it is worth justifying that, right? So, Kent Hovind is an idiot, a liar, and a friend to PDF files, the title of this. And I feel like the first two bits don't really need much justification. It's pretty obvious. But the last part probably does. And I will just say real quick, Kent Hovind frequently hosts a convicted abuser of children. And at one point, he arrived with a young boy named Zaire in tow. And Kent Hovind set them up in an uninhabited house that he owned, where there was no furniture except a mattress in one room. And he had them stay there. And other people on his compound are reported to have expressed concern and said that that seemed inappropriate. And Kent overrode those concerns. And then, yes, the boy did in fact report afterwards that he had in fact been abused on that trip to Dinosaur Adventureland. And there was a police investigation, and as far as I know, they did not find sufficient evidence to convict. But this man had previously been convicted, and Kent knows that, and he doesn't care, and said that that man is welcome on Dinosaur Adventureland whenever, and if you don't like it, you just don't have to come. So, that is me justifying the title of this stream, because I realized I hadn't done that. So, yeah. It's pretty bad. It's not a safe place for children. One child has already died on Dinosaur Adventureland. One reports that he was abused. There are persistent rumors of a disappearance, although I can't get details on that, so I don't know if that's true or what. But yeah, don't bring kids to Dinosaur Adventureland. It is not safe. They could die or be abused. And yeah.
Atmosphere has energy being added from the sun. This energy is moving the molecules around. Some of them get enough energy to bounce off and be lost. But you figure a molecule, 200 miles from the Earth, what's the nearest body attracting it?
The Earth. 200 miles is not that far away. It's the Earth.
The Earth.
Oh, okay, good.
Chances of it falling back in are very great.
Oh, good. He said the correct answer. I'll take a drink. Good job, Kent. You got it. I was so ready for him to be like, well, it's the moon. As if the moon was 200 miles away.
Whereas a molecule of water bouncing off of a pan of water gets up into the atmosphere, and now it has air molecules to move it around. So the chances of it finding the water again are slim, because it's in an atmosphere. However, with Earth, you're dealing with, right next to the air is space. Nothing.
Do you think that Kent thinks that the model of the Earth is that, like, there's atmosphere and then there's a hard cutoff and there's outer space, like the Flurfs seem to think is what's happening in, like, the standard model? Yeah.
If he thought that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either if he has the understanding of a Flurf when it comes to how the atmosphere works. If he ever says gas pressure requires a container, I'm going to lose it.
So it still has gravity pulling it back. You probably have to contact guys like ICR to get all the technical details on how they calculate how much helium can escape. Okay.
Or just contact real scientists, right? Like, I don't know, check with NASA maybe. NASA is the world's biggest consumer of helium anyway. They probably know.
Okay. Some of it can, but it's very different. It's the same principle, but it's very different numbers you'd have to use in your equation than a pan of water with molecules escaping, because there's no air. One of the many...
Yep, he thinks that there's just no air. He seems to think this is a hard cutoff, the atmosphere. Like it's Kerbal Space Program or something. Like, oh, I'm 70 kilometers up. Boom, no atmosphere. Fun fact, real life is not Kerbal Space Program. It doesn't work that way. Great game, though. Shame about the sequel. Lieutenant Math Navigator for $5 says, for a brief moment of time, the answer was actually Thea. I mean, that's true. Although he was using the present tense, so I will forgive him ignoring Thea. So, yeah. All right, here we go.
Factors that keeps the water from just simply flying off is air pressure. There's many factors, you know, gravity, surface tension, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, he is actually right that the thing that keeps water liquid at most temperatures that you encounter water normally is air pressure, right? So, like, if there were no air pressure, it would just sublimate from ice directly to gas. Or if you brought a liquid into such an environment, it would just, like, boil very quickly. So, like, I guess I'll take a drink. That Kent is getting it right that pressure is important to keeping water liquid. And yes, I'm getting generous.
So, Jonathan Sarfati, who writes a lot for Creation magazine and for creation material.
And whom I once called Sephardi for an entire video, unintentionally getting his name wrong and putting the word fart in there. And I do not regret it, although I don't plan to repeat it, but it is a thing that happened. I spent an entire video calling him Jonathan Sephardi. It's Sarfati. Yeah. I think he blocked me on Twitter or something.
Twitter, I forgot about that place.
Yeah, it's a horrible place. Don't go there. It's like the elephant graveyard in The Lion King. Don't go there, Simba. You must never go there.
It does a great job, by the way. In 1998, wrote this article, said there's only enough helium in the atmosphere for 2 million years worth. So this is, again, one of the more complex evidences that this Earth is not billions of years old.
I mean, it's not that at all. But okay, I'm glad that Kent admits that he doesn't know how it works, I guess. A little bit of humility from Kent, I suppose. That's pretty unusual.
ICR has a great book on the real technical aspects of carbon dating if you want to get the go down long, you know, go down deep, stay down long, come up dry kind of arguments. This would be a good one. I've got it in my office there. Showing why the old numbers that they get from dating methods simply are not reliable. We all know from what we covered in video number 4, which would have been about CSE 103 early on maybe, that fossils are really dated by the strata they come from, and strata are dated from the fossils they contain.
All right, so we have gone into this a whole bunch of times, so I won't belabor it too much, but that is incorrect. That is a simplified way that you can think of how index fossils work. But actually what's happening is that index fossils are identified, and you can get a preliminary estimate for where you are in the geological stratigraphic column based on which index fossils you're finding. But what has actually happened is that we have, like I was describing earlier, both stratigraphic and radiometric information about huge amounts of the rocks on Earth. And we rely on stratigraphy for relative ages, which is to say this is older than this, which is younger than that, right? So if you were to, let's say you lined up all the people in a room by age, and you had someone come in, and you couldn't, and you told them, hey, these people are in an age order, right? They're from youngest to oldest. And you could probably get someone in and say, okay, well, I now know that he is older than her, and she's younger than him, and so on down the line of ages, right? But if you said to someone, hey, how old is this person? You point at someone. They can only kind of give you a guess. Can't tell you exactly just from that relative aging. Absolute dates, which is just dates with a number attached, it doesn't mean they're absolutely correct and perfectly known. It just means that there's a number attached to it. That's given to us by radiometric dating. And then we can use the combination of those to give age ranges for strata that we can't directly date. So if I say, okay, well, the closest in time to this sedimentary stratum that I can find, that there's some igneous rock above it, is 205 million years old. Then there's another igneous intrusion below it that's 207 years old, or million years old. Well, now I know that that strata is 207, 205 million years old. There you go. Now, Bent, when I was describing that, did I have to use a fossil to give me the age of the strata?
I don't think so.
No, I didn't. Yeah. That's because while index fossils are a good point of reference and they can help you out with your preliminary examination, that's not where we stop when it comes to dating strata or fossils for that matter.
We won't review all that now, but there's quite a few quotes here about that. Geologic column is how strata or fossils are dated. Actually,
that's like half right, but it's not wrong.
No fossils are dated with carbon dating.
Well, it's not entirely true. Some of the newest fossils can be dated that way, assuming that they're not permineralized. So, for instance, those mammoths that Kent was talking about, those are fossils, and they are carbon dated. But it's true that most fossils aren't carbon dated. So, like, again, he's kind of right.
They can only date things that contain carbon. And by the time a bone turns into a fossil, there's no longer any carbon in it.
Hey, Bent.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember earlier today when Kent was talking about carbon dating dinosaur bones?
I do.
And now he's telling us that that's impossible?
He's confused.
Yeah, I'm taking a drink.
He's making me confused.
Like, which one is it, Kent? Can we carbon date dinosaur bones or not? Because you've said yes and no so far. I have trouble imagining what it's like to care so little about internal consistency, right? Because, like, if someone points out that I'm believing two contradictory things, and then I look at it, and I'm like, yeah, that is contradictory. I guess I have to figure out which one is right. Like, I will do that. I will check. It is going to be a concern of mine. Uh-oh. I believe two contradictory things, and I'll look into it. Kent apparently doesn't even notice.
Because it's all been replaced by the minerals in the ground. They can only date things like charcoal or things that still have carbon in them. Wood could be carbon dated in theory. Okay, it's all based on circular reasoning. Here's an interesting quote here. In the last 2 years, an absolute date has been obtained for the Gandong beds above the Trinal beds. It has the very interesting value of 300,000 years, plus or minus 300,000 years. Well, exactly how old is that layer?
Well, that old. You just said 500 plus or minus 300. So somewhere between 200 and 800,000 years. There you go. That's the answer to your question, Kent.
Somewhere between 0 and 600,000.
Did he not say 500,000 plus or minus 300,000? Did I misremember?
I don't know actually what he said. What numbers he said.
All right, well, maybe he didn't say that. That's what I thought he said. I don't know. Maybe I just misheard him. It happens.
I vote for 4,400. That's my vote, okay? Moon rocks were brought back in 1969, given to many different laboratories to be dated. One rock, called the Genesis rock, specimen 10017, was divided into 6 pieces and dated many times. The ages ranged from 2.5 billion to 4.6 billion.
I mean, it would be cool if we got a citation, but yeah, that can happen if your specimen includes crystals of different ages, because not all crystals will melt during all of the various, like throughout the history of whatever rock you're seeing. So this happens on Earth with a lot of different crystals. So like, yeah, that's why it's when you're dating rocks, you have to be careful not to include things like zircons, because zircons have an extremely high melting temperature that's much higher than the temperature of most like magma chambers. And so they're very unlikely to ever melt. And so if your sample includes zircons, well, you're going to get an older age than the actual age. So what probably happened was there were some crystals that formed about 4.5-ish billion years ago, you know, around the time the moon formed. And that there was later, you know, lunar volcanism that didn't melt all those older crystals. And so those older crystals were embedded in younger rock. Of course, I don't actually know that this entire thing even happened because, I mean, there's no source. And even if there is, my guess is it's going to be like, call my friend who says he worked at NASA. Here's his phone number if you don't believe me. Or it's going to be like Reader's Digest in the year 1972 said this thing. I guess it wouldn't be 72 because that would be before the moon landing, wouldn't it? When was Apollo 11 event?
Isn't that before 72?
I thought it was like 76 or something. I don't know. I'm going to find out because I don't remember.
I wasn't alive yet, so that's my excuse.
Let's see. 69. So yeah, it would have been after. All right, never mind.
Well, Your Honor, if you're getting nearly 100% error from the same rock, how do you know any of them are right?
I don't understand the question.
What is a 100% error?
I guess
That's what Clint just said.
an error that has a... So if you have an error margin that's larger than the actual like mean value, I guess you could say that's a more than 100%. Like if my error is like 3 inches plus or minus 6 inches, I guess you could call that like a 200% error, I guess. It's a weird way to talk about it.
It's a weird way to phrase it, for me at least, but yeah.
Yeah. But also that just means that you don't have a terribly precise measurement, but it doesn't invalidate the measurement because some measurements are imprecise. Oh, look, it's a phone number. That's the source. If you don't believe me, follow up. James P. Dawson, Chief of Engineering and Operations for the Lunar and Earth Science Division. Okay, cool. It's a phone number. Oh, my goodness. Don't call this number, guys. I'm pretty sure it's not his number anymore. Jeez. Which also means this wasn't published anywhere. Just some guy that he talked with in 1999, June 1st, presumably, or maybe it was January 6th. I guess probably January 6th because Kent's an American. Jeez.
James Dawson has a website. He was Chief of Engineering and Operations. His website, jpdawson.com. There's his phone number, address, etc. He worked on lunar samples, including the Genesis rock. When I called him back in January 69, or 99, I said, Mr. Dawson, how old is the moon? He said, I don't know. We got numbers of 10,000 to several billion from the same rock. But after dating all the moon samples, they of course came up with a date and said, well, the moon is 3.5 billion years old, because at the time that's what they were teaching the age of the Earth was, 3.5 billion. Marvin Lubenow, in this book, Bones of Contention, have you read that one yet, Jeff? Yeah. It's in the pile to be read, right?
The precursor to Contested Bones, which is basically the same nonsense. Like, oh, there's apes, there's humans, and then there's jumbled bits of nonsense. Lieutenant Math Navigator for $2 says, we chose to go to the moon in this decade. That, and then so on. Yep, that was the Kennedy speech about the NASA program. And then, of course, it had to be Nixon who was president when they went. One of these days, we're going to get a, like, somewhat passable president to take a call from the moon.
That's an excellent, excellent book. Okay.
I saw a magazine today that had the same title on it.
There are probably 100 books out there with that same title. Because it's a phrase. I have a bone of contention. It means I have an argument with you about something. There's bones of contention, and then we have another little magazine called, magazine format booklet called Bone of Contention. You probably ran into this making the catalog, Daniel, slight difference in title. Who cares? Anyway, he used an interesting article Marvin Lubenow has about how they change the dates whenever they need to. And it deals with potassium-argon dating. Potassium-40 is another radioactive element. It has a much longer half-life. Remember, the carbon-14 half-life is 5,730 years. This book says 5,770. Like I said, you're going to get numbers all over the scale, but somewhere a lot less than 6,000. Potassium-40.
By the way, no, you won't. The half-life of carbon-14 is pretty tightly known. There's not a whole bunch of answers all over the scale.
Has a half-life of 1.3 billion years. Well, anybody with half a brain ought to be asking themselves the question, how do they know that that's the half-life? Who?
By measuring it.
Watched it for 1.3 billion years anyway.
Oh my God. I'm going to take a drink.
They're just measuring it with their clocks or their watches, timing the billions of years.
So let's say I'm driving down the highway and I got pulled over. And the cop says, hey, you were just you were just driving at 120 miles an hour. That's way too fast. And then I say, but were you actually watching me drive for 120 miles and timing it to see if it took an hour? And then, of course, presumably the cop will say no. And then I guess I get off of getting in trouble for driving 120 miles an hour down the highway because the cop didn't watch me for 120 miles to see if that's how fast I was going. You think that would hold up in court?
Kent would think that would hold up in court.
Yeah, because that's what Kent is asking us. Like, unless you waited around 1.3 billion years, you can't say that that's the half-life. As if we couldn't measure rates like that without, just say, okay, Kent, we waited a millionth life. We wait till a millionth of the sample decayed. How about that? And then we extrapolate. So Kent either just doesn't know what measurements are, or he just can't figure out like unit conversions. Like, I'm not sure what the malfunction is. Let me know in the comments if you're watching this. Like, what do you think the problem that Kent has here? Is he just unaware that you can measure rates? Like, at all? Is his problem unit conversion? Is he lying? Let me know how you think it is that Kent imagines that was a good argument. Lieutenant Math the Navigator for $5 says, like, Kent even knows what it's like to have a quarter of a brain. True. Lieutenant Math the Navigator for $2 says, what if you were traveling for 120 miles? Yeah, instead of driving, I was only traveling. You can't arrest me because I have a right to travel, and I'm a free man on the land, or a sovereign citizen, or whatever. I am the living dinosaur, Dapper Dinosaur. My name in all caps is not me. That is just the trust that the government has created in my name. You can put all bills to that trust. I am, in fact, not subject to the laws and regulations of the United States of America by virtue of me having said so and spelling my name without all caps. Definitely a valid legal strategy. Always works. It never works. It never works, by the way. Don't try a sovereign citizen crap in court. It will not work. Remember that time that Kent sued Eric Hovind in a sovereign citizen court, and then all that Eric Hovind did was just ignore that fact? Because I remember that. Yeah. Kent tried to sue Eric for like all the stuff that Eric took from him. And okay, I've said this before, but like, here's the thing, right? You can actually use a sovereign citizen court to settle a dispute, right? And it can even be legally binding. But the key is that both parties have to agree to have that court-settled dispute, because at that point, it's just arbitration, right? And ultimately, as long as both sides agree, you can use basically anything as arbitration, right? If both sides agree to abide by a coin toss in settling their dispute, you can do that. That's fine. If two parties want to come to Bent Hovind and be like, hey, Bent, decide who among us is right, and Bent agrees to it, you can do that too.
I'll agree to that.
Yeah, sure. But if you just go to what is effectively an arbitration service, and then you just decide to say, I am suing you at this arbitration service, the other person who has not agreed to this arbitration can just say, I don't care. And there's nothing you can do about it. You both have to agree at the outset. Lieutenant Math the Navigator for $2 says 0% of the time it works every time. Exactly. Yep. All right. Actually, we are at the point where I think it is a fine time for us to give Kent a rest and come back. We are at exactly 50 minutes into this video. So we only have 22 minutes left of this video. So that's kind of cool. All right. So, Bent, do you have anything coming up that you want to tell people about?
I do not. No.
All right. That seems fair. All right, so let's take a look at what's coming up for me here on the channel and other channels. So, first of all, on Thursday, July 2nd at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, we got the video, Jesus is Venus. Ben, did you know that Venus was given, like Jupiter gave birth to Venus, which is Jesus, and then Jesus smashed into Earth and also smashed into Mars before it went to its current location?
That is fascinating. I did not know
yeah.
that.
So
I
when
didn't know it was possible to know that.
Yeah, well, when Jesus came to Earth, that was actually the planet Venus smashing into Earth. Yeah.
That makes so much sense now.
Yeah, well, that explains the period of darkness around the crucifixion time that you see in the Gospels.
Is that what that was?
Yeah,
Venus?
that was Venus covering up the
Let's see
sun
the
before it
sun.
smashed into Earth.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's what's coming up on Thursday. We'll be taking a look at someone who claims that Venus is Jesus. Jesus is the planet Venus. And that Jupiter gave birth to it from the Great Red Spot, which, by the way, is a vagina, in case you were wondering.
I figured it was.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, you just look at it and you're like, yep, I can see what that is.
Exactly.
That round reddish thing. All right. Then on Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, Star Trek Adventure should be back. So we got Star Trek Endurance that has Maddie, it's got Kip, it's got Zerulon, it's got Tirirana, it's got Chesh. Actually, Kip won't be there. Manya might be there. I'm not sure. I have to double check with her. She asked me to get back with her a few days later, and I have not done that yet. So I'm going to ask. But it is a good time. We have a lot of fun there. That'll be on my second channel, Top Hats Off. So if you want to see a bunch of nerds sit around and pretend to be Star Trek characters, come watch that. Then on Saturday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, I have a show titled "The United States Would Have Been 250 Today." And so while I am going to have the baraminology video queued up and ready to go, I will be also starting off with a little bit of a chat as to why I say that the United States does not exist. And I'm not going to give away all of it, but I will say this. It is not because I think the United States has lost some great moral standing that it used to have. That is not my contention. My contention is much more direct in terms of the United States as had a form of government for 248 years, and it stopped having that form of government, and therefore it is unreasonable to say that the country that exists now is the same country and that it has like actual continuity between those two. In the same way that while people on the ground didn't notice some big shift in continuity between the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire, in hindsight, we can recognize there was a big shift. And I think that such a shift happened back in 2024. And I will discuss why it is I think that. And you don't have to agree with me. That's fine. I'm just explaining myself in that video. And I believe that Vishanti will be around, so she can be pushed back too. All right. With that, I think we are done here for today. I will say the plan is to go and stream some Star Trek Enterprise over on the Discord server. So if you have access to the Discord server, please feel free to stop by. We'll watch some Star Trek. And if you don't, consider joining the Patreon or the memberships, because you'll get that. And yeah, we'll watch 2 episodes. And I might not be at my microphone the whole time because there are some things I want to take care of. But yeah, come hang out with us. And the last thing I have to say is that ICE must be abolished.
Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Siloof, Ben Hovind, Tapioca Weasel, The Plastic Mouse, Mikhail Dominiak, Sphincter of Doom, Regios, Landon Knoll, Ian Chen, Eleron Teller, Phil Rivera, David Hercules, Joshua Geese, Dan Sheedy, Pega Jace, Arrow Dodger, Gordon Love Science, Ember Athelian, Prixie Purple, Agricola Sequa, Me, Myself, and I, Ian Kiambi, Edwin M., Kenneth Swenson, and John Ackerman. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 15% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.